We got someone else sharing their screen. There we go. All right, you guys, welcome to our workforce development webinar series where today we're going to talk about selecting talent to build successful teams. We have Sailu here. He's in Des Moines and he's from creative planning and he is going to tell us all about this topic. And we are also recording this webinar. So if you want to rewatch this at any time or share with anyone else, it can be found on our YouTube channels and we can also send you this directly as well once we're done recording, but I'm gonna pass this on to Sailu and we'll get started on this webinar.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And just real quick, can everyone see my screen? Is it popped up?
Yep.
Okay, just making sure the border went away. So thanks for having me today. Again, my name is Sailu Timbo. We're here to talk about selecting talent to build successful teams. And hopefully, maybe there's some questions and discussion points we'll have or some key points throughout this that will really point to the fact that selecting talent isn't just as easy as posting a job, a position, going through the interview process, and hiring someone. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. And every day, and as generations continue to evolve, we're seeing that become more and more polarizing. So want to have a good conversation about that. A little bit of background about myself. So I'm a partner and business advisor here at Creative Planning. On the business services team. My main focus as being an advisor or a consultant is human capital strategies. So I help clients through unique circumstances around building just organizational alignment with their teams, compensation, talent acquisition. Also, we do direct hire, and we also do cultural and talent assessments for our clients and help them just remove any blind spots that could be and be an extra set of eyes and ears. And so we also do high-level business strategy consulting and other unique areas in that same space. So it's good to be here with you. Before that, I spent 24 years at Hy-Vee, doing everything from running stores, starting in the salad bar department when I was 16 years old, to spending time working and leading organizations, at times managing upwards of 1,000 people at a time, multi-store. I also wrote the corporate ads and ran community engagement for the whole organization. So blessed to spend that time at Hy-Vee, and there's a lot of learnings that over the 24 years that turned into experience I can share with you. And it really starts with these things that I'm going to call objectives, which building a sense of belonging is the first thing that I want to make sure that we highlight. And then we're going to talk about talent life cycles and how to find and attract top talent within your organization. There again, it's more of an art than a science, but there's areas where we can put some science and data into that whole process and market to potential candidates, clients, people who want to come work for us. And the last thing I really want to highlight, as everything comes together, is building a successful team. How do we build successful teams that are high performing, that are continue to be innovative, to continue to push the needle when it comes to employee engagement and client satisfaction, customer satisfaction, whoever your end user is for your business. And I'm going to start with this slide here. And this is an easy slide. And I think a lot of us have experienced this. I know I have in my career, both seeing it visually, but also being part of it. And also leading teams that have probably had some of these issues where you have this toxic work environment. And it's a simple diagram photo here that just shows how people can come to our organization and we can easily push them off a cliff, which is turnover, which is bad turnover. We all know that costs us money. We can put a figure to it and say, if we can, find a way to mitigate turnover within our organization, it can equate to significantly more dollars within our company. There's such thing as good turnover. But bad turnover is what we want to work against in any company. So it starts with this. Belonging. And what does it mean to belong? A lot of this is a question that is being brought up a lot. I mean, I relate it to some DEI talks. I think it's the byproduct of inclusion, where we stand on that issue. That's not the conversation, but more of ultimately, we all want to win within our organization. And to do that, we have to build bridges and not walls. And if a wall is up, I don't feel like I belong in an organization. So we have to ask that question and understand that it does underpin and contributes to organizational success. So I start with this. Belonging, I would define it as a feeling. And great quote by Maya Angelou. It's my absolute favorite quote. I think we can use it in a lot of different parts of life, but I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will often forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. We as leaders in organizations can control that. And it's creative. And it all depends on the people, the individuals that you're talking to at that time. Allows people to come together and be the rally cry and beacon. You know, an employee who feels like they belong is going to be more engaged, they're going to be more productive, and they're going to stay longer. And I think there again, they are going to be able to do their best work, which equates to dollars. We haven't even really talked about innovation, because innovation, someone within your organization has the next $1 million idea. And so if we start with that as, let's create a safe space where people feel like they belong, they feel like they can come in and do their best work, I guarantee you there's someone there who has an idea that you can capitalize on as a business. And also our employees want it. They want it because they know, and it's been proven that it's going to lower turnover risk. Fewer sick days, absenteeism is better, and increase in job performance, which is the value key of focusing on belonging. So just to get a better understanding, and this is somewhat of a busy slide, so just a few of the takeaways I want you to take away from this is, really what belonging looks like at work is that employees feel like it's safe to express ideas. They're not concerned about what people are going to think of them, or if they do make a mistake, which mistakes sometimes are good if they're not costly, exponentially costly, without fear that they're going to get reprimanded in a way that's not productive and get past it. So that's trust, that's respect, that's inclusivity at all levels of an organization. So as an individual in an organization, I want to feel like I'm valued. My mentor when I was at Hy-Vee, and we're an employee-owned company. When we ran our stores, it was like, this is my store. Hy-Vee gave me $15 million to go run our business. He used to say to me, his first thing he said to me, and he was actually retiring at the time, he goes, no one's going to care about your building more than you. And I really thought about that for a while. And what that meant was a rally cry to have a sense of ownership, and and cultivating that within each and every employees, because they do some amazing things once they feel like they're owner. They feel like they're an owner. They feel like they can get off the pillow every single day and come to work and contribute and be part of the team and have fun, and everyone is on the same mission. So that's something we always want to create. We want to listen with intent, and also make sure we're recognizing contributions. Little celebrating wins can do nothing but add just another level of excitement within the organization. It can make someone feel good. We don't know what's going on in people's lives. So finding unique ways to recognize people is a leadership skill that I think we can't ever let die. I don't think we can ever not keep it at the top level of importance as we're leading. And also what that does is help ensure psychological safety within a company, and helping people connect and make some good relationships, because you really can't engage in the work until you have some kind of connections. You want employees to stay longer. You want them to feel productive, and have a sense of belonging, experience higher innovation, like we mentioned earlier. So we actually use a tool with our clients that are having some issues in this space, and we're able to measure through a psychologically safe and a very sticky assessment tool that has been designed by psychologists to look at how people work, what they want and what they feel is most important within their work environment every single day. Traditional um, employee engagement surveys ask you sometimes some questions or try to roundabout get to to the root question of, do you like your boss today? Do you like the people you work with? And, I'm willing to bet on Monday and Friday, there could be different answers. So the old equation of 50% of what's said is true 25% of the time, if you do the math, it's 12.5%, probably is the kind of results you're going to get with traditional employee surveys. Having a psychologically safe tool is something that I find of some big value. So as you're doing those listening suites and tours, and trying to get a good temperature of what's going on within your organization is super important that you have something that employees are going to trust. Um, yeah, and just full disclosure, at my time at a previous company, as soon as they filled out the surveys, they're asked their employee ID number. So a lot of them just hit delete. Well, okay, you're not going to get the answers that you need to hear. You're going to get the answers you want to hear at that point, unless an employee is already on their way out and they just want to share their opinion, which usually at that point is past. There's no saving that relationship. So we like to measure workplace dynamics, culture, and also how people communicate, connect, engage, and what's the most important to them. So having that sense of belonging, building that culture of belonging is so important as we want to talk about the talent life cycle. Because if those aren't in place, all we do is kind of in that first side where we bring people in and push them off a cliff. It's not a good strategy. So what we do here when we consult on anything human capital related is we like to put things through the human capital compass framework. And that's just looking at the four big components of what we call human capital: talent acquisition, talent alignment, technology and processes, which is your operations. You have your organizational culture, your sense of inclusion, compliance, but then you also have skill development, succession planning, which is part of the growth. No company does all four really, really, really well. But some are very good at at ones that win, and some are very good at others, like bringing people into the organization. So when you come to think about the four buckets, it's really important that we make sure that we compartmentalize how we really start to look at our talent and employee life cycle. So thinking about these specific areas of the talent life cycle and marketing the role of a certain position. So you have this position that you want to start with the attraction part. Well, that starts with job description. And does your job description speak to that person? Are they speaking to a few or are they speaking to many? That's a question to ask. And also making sure that it's clear, precise, and you can kind of feel the organization in there. Then you get on to interview questions, right? And we can all either not have interview questions when we go to interview, just have a conversation, or you can have a structured plan. Kind of depends on the job. But there's certain positions, especially those key positions where you need someone with experience, you need someone with their life experiences, also their organizational experiences to be able to come out. I always encourage behavior-based job interviews because we want to assess humility, hunger, and also emotional intelligence, and then also just see how they've overcome challenges or what opportunities they've seen or give their ideas of ways to improve. So clarity around work expectations, being upfront. I can't remember how many different times I've had people saying, if I knew this was going to be like this, I wouldn't have taken this job." Okay, that's going to hurt what we're going to talk about on the next slide when we're talking about employee branding. And expectations is clear, and you need communication to do that. Ongoing open communications from the start, which also leads into the experience of hiring, and it segues as you make your person you want to hire in the onboarding, right? All else fails, the jobs are being works happening every single day. What are the mechanisms for checking in with feedback? Mutual feedback. Again, I always encourage creativity. I believe in the first 90 days being the most important part of that employee life cycle and journey, because it's going to set the tone. It's going to set them up for success, or it's set it up for failure. And I tell people who don't really have a plan there, that you're setting them up for failure, right? And it's your choice on what you want to do. This is it right here. If you take anything away today, when we think about selecting the right people, got to think about the employee value proposition. Because not only does it speak to your people who you want to find, but also the people you currently do have within your organization. Because they're your champions. They're also your part of your marketing plan of telling the story. We talked about job descriptions, but also thinking about technology and the hiring tools you use and being able to reach the right audience. If you were to put a billboard up, your whole idea is to get people to their attention who drives by that billboard. Well, there's so many different billboards online and there's so many different jobs online. You're competing with a larger pool. It's easier to work remote. There's more information than we need available to us. And so how are you going to make sure that you're using technology and the right hiring tools to make sure you're capturing the right audience? And then think about your team, like we just talked about. Current and former employees, what do they say about you? And how do you listen to it online? Their true colors or their true communication of what they really think about you usually happens after they leave. Amazing place to work. I was looking for a new opportunity, or hopefully I retired, or I wouldn't touch some of the 10-foot pole. And here's why. There's always going to be bad. The internet, it's, freedom of speech. We all know the rules of that, but making sure there's more good and bad, I think that's up to you. And I think it's up to really making sure that you study and have a good understanding of what your people really think about your experience. I know I'm talking to a manufacturing audience, and turnover can be high because of the hard work and what it takes to manufacture products. Now, I'm not an expert, so I won't seem to act like I want to go into it, but I think that same tools apply when it comes to branding your organization, talking about the work experience, being upfront and honest about what employees should expect, but also what can they get out of it? What long-term can they get out of it? Learning social skills, learning how to connect and work with people who maybe came from different areas of the world, different unique opportunities to grow that you didn't think that you can do. I could come in as someone who's running a machine. The next thing you know, I'm running a department that has nothing to do with that specific machine I came to run. They want to be able to feel that. So your outside stakeholders too, that's customers alike. What is it like? What's the experience like working with the organization? Your talent marketing plan should be as strong as your business marketing plan. I use an old saying, the fastest way to kill a bad business is good marketing. So you want it to be strong, but then also you want to make sure that you're able to back it up. So if you can't back it up, what happens? Now you just lost credibility out there. So I'm going to move on here to selecting talent, because here's where I think a lot of organizations where they may say, oh, we made a bad hiring decision, whatever, that can happen. We all know you want to have less than those and then the wins, but it's objective or subjective hiring. We all lead with a bias, whether we want to deny it or not. We all have a bias, and we all put it in front of us as we're having any conversations. It's natural. It's how our brains work. I think back to when I used to interview people, and I'm a huge Iowa Hawkeye fan. I know I'm talking to people in Minnesota, but I have to say that is that if someone came in my office to sit down and interview for a position, probably one of the first questions I asked them, and they could tell by looking around at all the posters and all the pictures, is that I was a huge Hawkeye fan, and I'd ask them, "Are you a Hawkeye fan?" And if they said no, there's a slight chance maybe I didn't give them a job, even if they're very qualified for it. I'm not saying I can go back and pinpoint, but there's a slight chance. So going back to behavior-based interviews and structured interviews, is the whole idea is to help remove biases and look at things from not only an art, but a science, right? And so we have a tool that I love to use, and we use it for our clients use it, where we're able to actually take what the job description is and create a persona. And in that persona, the same assessment will be used for candidates, and they can actually, and you can see it on the top right quadrant on the screen, we're able to overlay and say, all right, based off of this position, these are the key competencies that are needed. Does this person have these key competencies or not? They're also able to look at to see, okay, what part of the business will they be successful in? What areas, what are some of the important areas based on this role, this position that they'll be very, very successful in? So along with that, and then taking our interview process, and that could be again focusing on behavioral interviews. It could be interview teams and interview panels. However, that individual situation shakes out, we're able to have better data for our hiring decision and be able to stand behind it. And also know if there are gaps, we can help that individual get through those gaps. That is part of the employee value proposition. So, mind you, the assessments aren't a replacement for interviews, but they help take some of the guesswork out of hiring. Another thing when it comes to hiring is thinking that we always need to have someone that has every single I's dotted and T's crossed and have to check all the boxes. Well, what if the boxes are just a little bit more simpler to digest and they're not necessarily so daunting? So here's what I call the ideal team player. And Pat Lencioni came up with this. It's about really understanding the key simple virtues for team success. Now, here again, if I was a hospital and I wanted to hire a doctor, you can't hire me because I stayed at a Holiday Inn. Okay, so I'm not saying swing to that point. There still has to be some kind of skills and aptitude and capabilities available within an individual, but you got to think about your team, and you also got to think about and ideal players, team players in your team, but also those you want to join your team. Because ultimately, remember, we want to win, just like you would in football. I'm a big football guy, so I talk a lot about it. This reminds me of high school football. That was probably like the bus, what it looked like, joking, having fun, and everyone on the same mission. In the book Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about the team bus. And you got to ask yourself the question, first who, then what? So first who is who's on the team and what seat are they on that team, right? So you have to get the right people on the bus. For an offense on football, you need a quarterback, you need a running back, you need receivers, you need linemen, you need a center. And the center needs to have cohesiveness with the quarterback. The receiver needs to be in lockstep with the quarterback, right? So you have a leader of the team. You also want to get the right people in the right seat. That center can't play running back. They may be able to carry the ball and run, but there's probably someone more suitable for that. So there again, the whole metaphor is the right people in the right seat on the bus. And that takes time and it takes practice and also takes evaluation, right? So with that evaluation, you're looking for that ideal team player, that center who may want to play running back because it is so fun. They want to run through the holes and score all the touchdowns. It may not be the right fit for you, right? In that specific position. But what about when you have the wrong people on the bus? Like I mentioned earlier, there is such good thing as good turnover. When someone's becoming emotionally expensive for your organization, or they're just not a good fit, and that's okay, as long as you've given everyone the opportunity to succeed, right? Any coach that you know wants the employees, I'm sorry, every player to give their best. But he may have sometimes we have to get the wrong people off the bus. And so I'm going to get into what we call the ideal team player. Again, Pat Lencioni's real simple framework to identifying what are the key virtues that we're looking for when we want to hire people. And it's simple. It's humble, hungry, and smart. And humble is probably the most important one. It's the most important virtue, and it's the most nuanced to understand because it means like you're not overly arrogant. You have confidence because lack of confidence is going to be a violation of having a sense of humility. It's thinking of the team over self. It's not necessarily thinking about less of yourself. It's thinking less about yourself when you're thinking about a team. So someone who's hungry, humble. You have hungry, where you're looking for that individual, that person who has that drive. They just want to do more, right? And they're somewhat of a bull in the china shop. They want to get after it. They want to jump into things. That's what gets them off the pillow every day. You also got smart. Smart, I'm not talking about intelligence smarts. We're talking about people savvy. We're talking about someone who knows how to navigate and read the room and be personable, friendly, can get individuals to achieve more just with their, frankly, just with their smile and just with their people skills. And so it's a very, very key virtue. All three of them are very important. Now, I will say, not everyone is going to be amazing at all of them. Some are going to be better than others. Some are going to have two versus all three, or they're going to have one of the key virtues versus all three. And so, through this, Lencioni teaches us about labels, right? So you have the pawn, who is going to be humble, but they're going to lack hunger. And I guarantee you, you can look in your organizations and think about these people and be able to peg. So, okay, yeah, this is that person, right? You got the bulldozer, someone who's hungry but lacks humility. You got a charmer, right? They're smart, but they lack humility, and maybe they're not the hardest worker in the world, but they know how to charm people, and everyone just likes them. Then you got the accidental mess maker. They're humble and they're hungry and they're sometimes not smart. I've been accused of being this sometimes. I've been accused of being it because I'm that guy that says, all right, let's just get after it. Okay, but what are we getting after? Oh, okay, let's think about that later. You got the lovable slacker. My best friend tells me about how much he doesn't work, and I call him the lovable slacker because everyone loves him. So we all have those people. We have those who play politics too. They're hungry, they're smart, but they're not necessarily humble. So these are the key virtues that you see. And how can you tell? And so there's an assessment that I'm going to send out, and actually as follow-ups. There's an assessment you can take as a self-assessment. I think is a great tool to use as team building exercise within your teams as you want to think about how each individual teams run. But then also you can use them for people who are coming into your organizations. Along with some key questions and interview questions that make sense around being humble, hungry, and smart, and build them into your process. You will have better outcomes. I promise you that. So being humble, listen for we versus I. Um, Hungry, you're looking for someone who just has initiative and they're just moving forward, and the smart, the difficult conversations, they pick up on social cues, they know some of the red flags of situations, what's going on, be it good or bad, and how to capitalize that. And so they're the cheerleader, right, of an organization. So to build on these successful teams, I want you to think about this survey here. This is from 2021. It's a little old, but I don't think it's out of date. So this SHRM survey, 25% of people reported not trusting their manager and treating them their manager to treat them fairly. So trust is a big issue, right? 26% do not feel emotionally safe at work. It's hard to work if I don't feel emotionally safe. I'm holding something back. Again, idea, innovation, just how processes should work, maybe a little bit more closed off, so not receptive to feedback, not receptive to criticism, to being coached. 27% of workplaces not clearly provide opportunities for employees to openly discuss issues without fear of penalty, punishment, or retaliation. 27% also don't think their manager encourages a culture of open and transparent communication. So these are sobering, and it makes sense. And we see them all the time through just any particular situation within an organization. So thinking about what that really is the five dysfunctions of a team, which is another Lencioni learning that I feel, and we're going to hit on this briefly, is very, very important if you think about the team dynamics. You see the triangle on there. The very number one is the absence of trust. If you don't have trust, it means you have a lot of tension within your organization. Not a lot can get done when tensions are high. Next one on there is fear of conflict. Without trust, teams avoid honest debate. They don't have honest conversations, and they're not being productive in how they fix any kind of conflict that could be in the air, which also creates a lack of commitment and more of people coming in, punching the clock, and leaving. The next one that it creates is a void of accountability. Lastly, ending on inattention to results. So at that point, it's affecting your organization's profitability. That is crashing the mountain, as running an object into the mountain and crashing the mountain, which is no good, and it's not good for anyone. And you start seeing results suffer just because of the fact that we have allowed dysfunction to go on within an organization. I go back to the team dynamics and think about, if you have a quarterback who has a play and in the huddle says the play and shares it with the plays going to the running back, the receiver cannot show their hand on what the play is going to be called. They can't show emotion. They have to run the play. They have to build trust that they can have an opportunity to score a touchdown either later on that drive or the next one. It's part of the teamwork dynamics. It's no different than what we do every single day. Is that we're all a team. As we say break, we're all on the same mission to go forward. So we've talked about how do we find talent? How do we bring people in? But we have to set them up for success. And so for onboarding success, first thing I'd say is remember, first impressions matter. Part of the culture should be set in the tone where employees decide in the very first 90 days whether they'll stay long term. At my time at Hy-Vee, we did an analysis of how long people were staying when we were hiring, and these were range anywhere from 16-year-olds, I mean, to so part-time employees, all the way through those who were with us, and we were able to realize by formulating a structured onboarding and engagement and retention plan that was an evergreen tree. We kept working on it. We signed a mentor. We set clear 30, 60, 90-day expectations, and we had manager check-ins. We were able to realize a 30% reduction in turnover within the very first 30 days of employment, which lent itself to better success. And we had to push it. And it was one of those things we couldn't give up on, especially those weekly check-ins, because we can have any kind of 30, 60, 90 on a cadence, but those check-ins is that breeding ground to build some trust and all that. And in that same time, setting the team up for success, you're able to really have clear roles and expectations and be able to hone in on it. Most people's first jobs, or first time at an organization could be like drinking out of a fire hose. So there's some reinforcement that needs to continue to happen. Continuous feedback loop that goes into that. And then also addressing any of the dysfunctions and fostering accountability before it gets to a point of diminishing returns and there's no going back. And on top of that, thinking about employee engagement and belonging, how do you have higher productivity and lower turnover? So you got to find a way to continue to measure engagement. Really, three ways to build engagements: open communication channels, pulse surveys. We talked about employee engagement surveys, like the one we use with Rework. It has to be psychologically safe. You want to create a space and an opportunity, a think tank to foster innovation. And then also think about recognition, as we mentioned earlier. Celebrate those wins, talk about the failures, criticize in private, and make sure everyone knows that they are so important to the cogwheel of your organization. Keeping your best people is what we want to do. They are our number one asset, is our best employees, those who are right for our organization, those who love what they do, those who are ready to move the needle. They think like owners, they feel like owners, but they are human beings. And lack of recognition and maybe career stagnation can lead to burnout. And we've all been there, and burnout doesn't make you feel like you can be productive and effective at work every single day. So it's not all just about pay. We haven't really talked about pay much. Yeah, you have to get the pay right. Compensation is very, very important. But I'm venturing to bet a lot of people will give up compensation to be in the right position to be able to work, grow, and thrive with people that they love working with. And those three keys to retention are simple. It's career development, offering upskilling, leadership training, and cross-functional projects. Flexible work benefits. That's there again. It's the beauty's in the eye of the beholder of the organization. You think about, I come from a retail world. Well, we can be flexible, but there's no work from home within a store. You have to be there to take care of your customers every single day, as the same in manufacturing and other things. But how can you add some flexibility? It could be flexible shifts, PTO, just mental health resources or health resources in general. And then, I think the last comment on there, the last bullet point, stay interviews, it really is like, I think we could sum it up and say, just don't wait to be disappointed, right? Ask employees what they what keeps them engaged? What keeps them coming back? What uh, what keeps them up at night? What are they concerned about? There could be some external concerns that they bring to work, and it's unfair for us to tell them, hey, leave that at the door. If there's some struggles going on within the home, it's hard to say, hey, leave that at the door. So we have to keep some of those things in mind. All right, I'm going to sum this up as some key takeaways, and before we open it up to any questions or conversations that we want to have. So here are the key takeaways. Hire for character, train for skill. Here again, you're hiring doctors, lawyers, high skill positions, or even within your industries, you have to define exactly what those skills are, what are needed, and what's not needed, and what can be trained. The best teams are built on belonging. Psychologically safe is going to fuel engagement, innovation, and performance. Don't forget the first 90 days. The first 90 days are going to determine the long-term success of an individual. Retention is going to be about growth and not just about pay. As we mentioned earlier, it's not always going to be about pay. If you can give me something of value and you can help me grow, maybe help me fill my gaps, then I'm going to be loyal to you forever. And I know the money will come at that time or whatever form of compensation. Great hiring is both art and a science. So use data-driven insights and structured interviews as you see fit. But remember, don't take away your creativity. This isn't about saying you can't have any kind of creativity in your interview process that wherever it makes sense. Your employer brand is your talent magnet. Candidates are going to choose you as much as you choose them, and they have leverage. So as you want someone you're really excited about, make sure that employer brand is speaking to a value proposition for that individual so they're going to want to come work for you. Don't guess, measure, right? You can't manage what you don't measure. So leverage tools, and we talked a little bit about NPO assessments and other tools. There's tons of assessments out there. Make sure that you're using the right tools to measure competencies needed for the position and also the competencies an individual has. You will have better results immensely. Last thing I want to say, just say what you mean and mean what you say. That's transparency in hiring and leadership and trust and communication and making sure that, um, the experience for that individual candidate, even if you don't hire them, you're still interviewing them for future positions. So with that, gone through the presentation, we have a few minutes left. Are there any questions that you may have that I could speak on or clarify?
One question is, what's the biggest mistake companies make when attracting top talent?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes companies make when attracting top talent is they lead with compensation as the leader. I don't think that they've really defined and created a brand, kind of like we talked about here. And they've also have it evolved. There again, I don't want to beat up my former employee, but one of the things that we used to be known for was our bread and butter is finding the 16-year-old kid. You stayed with us, you drank the Kool-Aid, and you worked for 40 years and then retired. Moved up the system, moved up the chain. I'm one of those all the way up to our CEOs. The last 4 CEOs at the company grew throughout the company the exact same way. That's not necessarily the case anymore. And um, it's not for any one thing, but we can't rest on those previous laurels. We have to make sure that the organization is attracting the talent that we want. And so that's what that's very, very important. The part is making sure that when we're going through our interview process, that we have a structured plan. I'm gonna give you an example here. So we just had a client that we helped them hire a CEO for their next CEO for this business organization. And previous three previous CEOs were tapped on the shoulder. Now, great, they had great success. They all did well, and the one we worked with is the one who's he's the incumbent CEO right now for this project and this process. Working with the board and being part of the solution, we created interview panels, and through this interview panels, there was a lot of, well, why are we doing this? We've never done this before. This isn't something that we think is going to work. How's it going to help us figure out who the best person is? kind of what we outlined today is the whole process we went through. We use an assessment tool for each candidate. We had a structured interview process with panels and some deliberation and some conversation. I can just tell you the person who I thought they're going to pick wasn't the person that they picked because they went through this process. And by the time the whole experience was over with, it was like, okay, we get it. This was a great process. We just worked through all of our blinders and we figured out this is the person that's going to take us to the next level, not the person who we thought of. This person is still great. We love them. They can still probably come in and do a job, but our best chances are winning. We found by going through an organization structured process to find this individual to take us to the next level.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any other questions? I have one more because we talk about finding the top talent and the best ways that we can do that, doing the structured interviews. What's one thing that every company should do within the first months of an employee's journey at the company?
Yeah. So, I talked about the 90-day rule. I think it's very important. And I think you can play around with how that looks.
Hmm.
Ultimately, you have to have conversations. And it's so important for the boss. Smaller companies, it could be the owner boss, larger companies, the department leader, to spend time with an individual. Like I said, you're feeling like you're drinking out of a fire hose. They're going to come in, they don't want to mess up, right? I'd say 95% of people who want to come to an organization, want to come work for you, they don't want to mess up, and they're going to have a little bit of anxiety and fear when it comes to that. The best way to work through that is to sit down and have conversations. Sometimes it's not even about work. It's about approach and it's about life and making sure that it's a very personable opportunity to engage, to tear down the walls that could be in place or could, someday come to place. Biggest reason I say that, not even just the 90 days of onboarding and all that, but as a leader of an organization or a leader as a department, I want employees to feel like they can come and tell me the truth, even if it's things I do not want to hear. And we all know what those are. So if I can create that safe space for you to come talk to me, they're not going to leave at the end of the day saying, I need to go talk to Sailu, but I don't know how. They feel like they can come and sit down, articulate their thoughts, and we can come and work out a solution the with the understanding and the trust that I'm going to do my best to go out and address it as it makes sense or address it right there. So very, very important to make sure we keep that front of mind. I often see and have these conversations with either clients or with people who I've worked with in the past, often see, well, that I don't do well with dealing with confrontation or some of these big concerns. So I just let it die in the vine. Wrong strategy. And it's not a good strategy at all. So got to get ahead of it. And once you build that and build the trust, you'll build the confidence in yourself that you can deal with it. You can't be a leader unless you can deal with some things that aren't necessarily as fun to deal with all the time. But you can make it fun at the end.
For sure. Well, I think that will probably wrap up our webinar unless
Okay.
anyone else has a question to ask in the chat or they want to unmute and ask quick. But Silo, I want to thank you for your time. Everything you said in your presentation was very insightful. It was awesome to see that presentation and hearing how you connect everything's. I will have this recording up on our YouTube and we can also share it with you. And then, like Solu said, he is going to be doing some follow-up things that you guys can also participate in as well.
Right. Yeah, you'll have that. Here's three books. A little bit. I used Ideal Team Player. It's a great book, great read. There's also some resources on YouTube about it. I'm going to send Ideal Team Player self-assessment. I encourage you just to use it with your team. Just try it out. Trust me, you will start really being able to get a good understanding of who is what and where within a team or an organization. I'm also going to send you a hiring guide that is just some simple questions that speak to the ideal team player, but then also a performance management document that I use. I found very, very successful to use when it comes um, to just sitting down and doing reviews, be it annual review, 6 month review, however it sees fit. But here's three books that I recommend. Take them down if you want. We didn't talk about Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. Very good book by John C. Maxwell. It's one of the best leadership books when it comes to communication. 99 times out of 100, most of the opportunities in that space of leadership is around communication. So I just want to end on that. Thank you for allowing me to come and join you today. I hope you found some value. I'm always happy to add some clarity or clarification or also take feedback. So
Mhm.
I love to hear it. So I appreciate your time and thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you all for attending. I hope everyone has a great day.